Well, Indian citizens are voting in the country's largest general elections, kicking off a vote in which Prime Minister Narendra Modi is seeking to win a rare third consecutive term. About 969 million people are eligible to vote in the biggest election in human history, with polling taking place in 7 phases over the next 6 weeks in the world's most populous country. Voting will be spread over April and May and end on June the 1st. The nationwide vote is considered among the most consequential in decades as Mr. Modi's powerful right-wing Bharatiya Janata Party aims for an outright majority and a mandate to widen its development during its 10-year rule. The big issues include a job crisis, rising prices, a crackdown on dissent and the opposition, and the politics of religion. Officials say results of the election will be announced on the 4th of June. At least 35 people have been killed and 47 others injured after a heavy rainfall triggered heavy floodings in Afghanistan. Around 38 houses were destroyed by floods. Vehicles were also damaged. The United Nations Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs says the severe rainfall lasted from April 10th to 16th. Other provinces, including Farah and Kabul, bore fatalities of the disaster. Meantime, the UAE is bracing up for more rains in the coming week as the country's weather agency forecasts more showers, although not as heavy as what was witnessed earlier in the week. Residents and government agencies are rallying together to bring normalcy to the tourist city, Dubai, after storms brought in heavy rains and severe flooding. Our Dubai correspondent, Mayawade Goke, has more on this.
Dubai is returning to normal 3 days after a storm brought in a year's worth of rain upon the United Arab Emirates in 24 hours, causing shocking scenes of never-before-seen floods in many parts of the country.
So many cars were submerged. There were people climbing up on their car roofs because they couldn't drive the car, and if they were going to stay inside the car, possibly they could drown. So we saw so many people getting out of their cars and climbing up on top of the roof. We saw so many rescue vehicles. I didn't expect that it could get this bad. It was really horrible. It was like a whole shutdown. I remember during COVID when everything shut down, even though it came gradually. This one was a total shutdown in a country that I felt were very well prepared for disaster, So coming to see that this was happening was really, really something I did not expect.
Harry was one of many residents caught in the storm Tuesday night as he tried to make his way to the Dubai airport with a friend traveling to Kenya. Dubai airport was not spared from the downpour and had announced suspension of activities on Wednesday after over 1,000 flights had either been diverted or cancelled. Activities are yet to return to normal as thousands are stranded and waiting to be boarded onto their respective flights.
So I just landed in Munich now. I was meant to travel Thursday midnight, so Wednesday/Thursday midnight. But because of the rainstorm and the flood, the flight was rescheduled and I got to travel on Thursday evening.
Dubai is recovering, some areas faster than others. In some parts of the city, vehicles are still submerged underwater. Houses are still flooded and out of power. Insurance expert Neeraj Gupta says the damage to property has been unprecedented and insurance companies are being flooded with claims requests.
The government way in advance informed about the expected situation, right? So a lot of schools were already shut. Government officers were moved to work from home. A lot of private officers were recommended to work from home. And as a result, if you were given enough warning, then still you took out a car and you could see there was water in front and you thought, I'll just drive through it. The chances are this is not going to be covered, right? The people who had their cars parked at their villas, apartment buildings or somewhere, and that is where the water got in, that obviously should be covered if it's a comprehensive policy. But if you took a chance and drove your car through a puddle of water, or when you could see the water was way high, and you thought you'll drive through it, the chances are you're gonna get claimed is very negligible.
However, residents are rising up to the occasion with several community-led initiatives offering information on passable roads, emergencies or shelter homes, and rendering assistance where needed. From Dubai in the United Arab Emirates, Maya Wadigoke for Channels Television News.
Over in East Africa, where an investigation is underway into a helicopter crash that killed Kenya's military chief Francis Ogola. The government has sent a team of investigators to the crash site where General Ogola and 9 others were killed. General Ogola was among 12 occupants of the military aircraft that went down on Thursday afternoon, shortly after takeoff in the northwest of the country. 2 of the occupants who survived the crash are receiving medical attention. President William Ruto has announced 3 days of mourning, calling it a moment of great sadness for the country. General Ogola first joined the Kenya Defense Forces on April 24, 1984. He was due to mark 40 years in the military next week. South Africa's renowned economist Gabriel Cruz says South Africa has many big problems and might follow in Zimbabwe's footsteps. He highlights issues such as the expropriation bill, which allows the government to take property without compensation, and poor state-owned institutions. He explains that there are many reasons why South Africa might become another Zimbabwe.
Is South Africa going to become like Zimbabwe? Well, maybe and maybe not. It's ultimately going to be up to us as South Africans to decide, but I'm worried, and here's why. The South African Parliament, just a couple of weeks ago, passed the expropriation bill, which allows the government to take property without compensation in a range of circumstances, including where people own the property and their primary interest is in selling it later at a profit. That's exactly the kind of legal change that was made in Venezuela before 21st century socialism collapsed the economy, destroyed democracy, and caused most Venezuelans either to flee or to literally go hungry. The second law that I'm worried about is called the Land Court Bill. If that's passed into law, it will basically turn the courts into kangaroo courts, because it allows people who aren't judges to rule on matters of fact in land disputes. And it allows hearsay evidence to play a decisive role. The third bill is the Unlawful Entering on Premises Bill, which is like a new trespass law, which effectively says that a mob can, in some people's interpretation, enter a property, whether it's a town property or a thing in the countryside, because they believe that they've got a historical justice reason to be there. Combine that with things like Julius Malema, the EFF leader, standing in a stadium full of people chanting, "Kill the Boer, kill the farmer," encouraging people to go and do land invasions. And the picture that you get is exactly what happened in Zimbabwe in 2000, which is where mobs of people were encouraged to go and take farms from an unpopular group, white rich people. And then the government came in afterwards and said, well, we're going to take the title deed as well, and then we're going to give these farms to the people by actually giving it to rich, connected government officials. And the economy collapsed. But you know what else collapsed? Democracy. We did an international study. In every case, in Africa, in Asia, in Europe, in the Americas, in every single case where the government was able to take the property of some people, some unpopular group, it was also able to take away the votes of some people. Who? Those who wanted to vote for the opposition, a small group. The worry is that that's going to happen in South Africa too.
Well, hunger levels have increased across the African continent in the past 2 years due to lingering effects of the COVID-19 pandemic, ongoing conflicts, the climate crisis, and economic shocks. This is according to Q Dong-yu, Director General of the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations, speaking at the opening of the 33rd session of the FAO Regional Ministerial Conference for Africa. He says the continent's possibilities are vast and optimism about the opportunities that lie ahead is in order despite the many challenges.
Hunger in Africa has increased driven largely by ongoing effects of the COVID-19 pandemic, economic shocks, climate crisis, and ongoing conflicts. We are meeting at a critical moment which requires our urgent and collective action. Despite the many challenges, I remain optimistic about the opportunities that lie ahead. Africa boasts the largest area of arable land of any continent and is bound in the natural resources. It is through the transformation of Africa agrifood system transformation that we can unlock the benefit across food security and nutrition, economic equality, environment, and resilience. The urgent need for agrifood system transformation is central to the discussion at this regional ministerial conference, and the FAO Strategy Framework 2022-31 is a roadmap towards the more efficient, more inclusive, more resilient, and more sustainable agrifood systems for better production, better nutrition, a better environment, a better life living around behind.
And still ahead on the program. Nigerian fintech startup Harvest provides financial services for underdeserved and excluded women in Africa. Welcome back. Following consultation with public health agencies and experts, the World Health Organization has published a global technical consultation report introducing updated terminology for pathogens that transmit through the air. The pathogens covered include those that cause respiratory infections like COVID-19, influenza, measles, Middle East respiratory syndrome, a severe acute respiratory syndrome, and tuberculosis, among others. The publication is entitled Global Technical Consultation Report on Proposed Terminology for Pathogens that Transmit Through the Air, and is the result of an extensive multi-year collaborative effort and reflects shared agreement on terminology between the WHO, experts, and 4 major public health agencies: Africa Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, Chinese Center for Disease Control and Prevention, European Center for Disease Prevention and Control, and United States Centers for Disease Control and Prevention.
What it's trying to do is to bring what has been different communities of scientific experts together. Instead of working in their own disciplines, try and bring nurses, public health, epidemiologists, physicists, engineers, all together to agree on a common set of terminology, of words that we can all agree on, and then we can go forward and do the science that will guide how we then go about making sure that we can control pandemics, including COVID, but not limited to COVID. It's a hugely important first step. But next, we need to keep the disciplines, the experts together. We're using the same terminology, the same language, and now we need to do the science that provides the evidence on tuberculosis, on COVID and other respiratory pathogens, so that we know how to control those infections better than we have done in the past. And I think what this document does is bring the disciplines together and get common agreement. When I say aerosol, when I say through the air, it doesn't matter whether I'm an engineer, a clinician, a nurse, a public health person. We know we mean the same thing. Now the communities have got to stay together and work together, but also challenge each other. And that's the joy of working across disciplines. This document brings people together. All the 500 experts agree with this new terminology, and now we can move forward. And I hope those interfaces between disciplines now stay in place. I hope the funders fund that interdisciplinary work, because I think this is so important.
Meanwhile, the goal to deliver quality, affordable health services to 1.5 billion people by 2030 is one of the World Bank's latest priority as it moves to improve healthcare services globally. The plan hopes to cover infancy, childhood, adolescent, and adulthood. The World Bank President, A.J. Banga, was speaking at an event tagged Expanding Health Coverage at the ongoing spring meetings in Washington. Our correspondent, Sarah Achimogu, reports.
Gentlemen.
Again, top executives of development institutions, policymakers and members of civil society organizations are converging on this venue to discuss issues of universal health coverage.
2 billion people in this world.
Globally, health concerns continue to emerge, leaving persons without the hope of how to address their health concerns. But the World Bank is pledging to step in to bridge the gap.
If you want to broaden the access for those, then you have to widen your aperture to include that. And that's what we are trying to do in this effort, reach 1.5 billion people over the coming period with the WHO, with other partners, and make that happen by 2030. And reach them means really reach them. I don't mean reach as in you put up a center and everybody in the area is counted.
The president of the World Health Organization also shares his concerns regarding the health needs of the people.
Since the birth of WHO, that's 76 years ago, life expectancy has increased from 46 to now 74 average. So we're on progressing. But if you see the SDG goals directly, if you compare it with the SDG goals, we're off track.
Yeah, very.
And I don't think without a very serious catch-up, we may even reach the SDGs.
The Susan Thompson Buffett Foundation.
Next, panelists mount the podium. One of them is Nigeria's Minister of Health. He speaks on how the government is prioritizing health and some of the challenges in meeting the universal health coverage targets.
Challenges of human resources are certainly one that is not limited to us. We've doubled the intakes for our physicians, nurses, midwives, pharmacists to increase the production of health workforce in our country, to redistribute them, and also to create the enabling environment so that they can stay and function. That's one challenge. But financing is a key one. And the financing gap that we have, certainly we're very encouraged when we hear Ajay mentioning 1.5 billion, and that's a significant commitment by the bank to actually do that. But then backing it with the resources that are needed.
The World Bank estimates that around 2 billion people globally face severe financial hardship when paying for health services. This is made more challenging owing to climate change, pandemics, conflict, aging, and a projected shortfall of 10 million healthcare workers by 2030. From Washington, D.C., Sarah Chimogu, Channels Television News.
From health to finances, from target savings to investments and credits specifically for women farmers, Nigerian fintech startup Harvest is providing financial services for underserved and excluded women in Africa. Part of the goal of the inclusive fintech platform is to close the economic gender gap through financial literacy, mentorship, and access to funds.
So we don't have an extra screen as well. So.
This inclusive fintech company is on a mission to close the gender finance gap, hindering the economic empowerment of women in agriculture. In an effort to rewrite the narrative, they are empowering smallholder women farmers and traders with access to savings, investments, and credit, thereby breaking down barriers that have constrained the potential of these women.
We provide women access to savings and investments as well as credit. So what we do is we have two types of customers. We have the supply side and we have the demand side. So the supply side are users that would use our mobile app to save, invest. And the investing is more or less impact investment. And this impact investment goes to underserved women in rural areas, which are notably smallholder female farmers, as well as women leading micro-enterprises. The women that use our mobile applications actually invest in women in rural areas by putting in their funds. So these women can use this money to farm as well as run their businesses, micro-enterprises.
Nigeria envisions becoming Africa's breadbasket, but faces a 20 to 30% gender gap in financial inclusion, especially in agriculture, and that's according to the World Bank Group. Despite their vital contributions, women farmers produce 30% less per hectare than their male counterparts, mainly due to limited access to land, seeds, fertilizers, and mechanization.
I realized that there was a challenge, and the big challenge was that a lot of women were not consuming financial services, even across board, even at banking, which is meant to be like the basics of financial services. And of course, this were due to many reasons that, I cannot exactly sweat here, but they are largely due to our societal constructs, the patriarchy itself, and a lot of women feeling like finance is a man thing and they can afford to sit back and not consume it. Because when you look at trade, when you look at the market, the farms, women constitute more, they contribute a lot of activities, in making money. But between making money, saving it, and then ultimately investing it, something breaks for women due to financial education, due to lack of access to easier tools that is custom to their daily living, because a lot of women, if you look at it, are actually time poor, right? So there are just so many factors, as I've said, that are varied, and we decided to start Harvest that would build the face of financial services that does not leave any woman behind, regardless of their income, economic background, creed, or age.
Through a blended finance model, Harvest is revolutionizing agriculture financing, providing vital resources and training to marginalized smallholder women farmers.
It's not going to be business as usual. That's what we've realized. So what we do is we deploy custom solutions to custom groups of women, savings and impact investment to some, credit to some, and then we offer this in a peer-to-peer lending model.
By leveraging digital technology and a peer-to-peer model that connects women farmers with the much-needed capital and resources, Harvest is not only closing the gender finance gap, but also leveling the playing field for women in agriculture. However, this also poses challenges for the niche company.
One of our major challenges has been the fact that we're a niche product and we're for women. And we are sidelining like half of the population, more or less. But what we're trying to preach is inclusivity, which means that we're not actually excluding men, but we're making men allies to empower women financially. We give these women access to funds so that they can run their businesses effectively. And we also give women on the other side of the divide that have access to funds but don't know where to invest it as well.
For Harvest, the journey has just begun. A movement towards a more inclusive and equitable Africa.
The vision was clear from day one, but every day, this morning, tomorrow, everything keeps, getting better in terms of strategy. So when we started with just the savings part of the business and the credit, for instance. But over time, now we have group savings, now we have impact investments, now we have, varying types of offerings on the product. And over time, the product too has expanded from just being available on mobile application alone to being available on web application and to being available on USSD.
As this fintech company continues to empower women, the ripple effects of its initiatives are felt as it paves the way for a future where gender equality flourishes.
And finally, on the program, as many as 500 friendly cats have found a home on Cat Island, a remote grassy refuge for strays on the outskirts of Shanghai. It's a free abode for the stray cats as they are fed and cared for by a team of animal lovers. The team at Cat Island nurture the animals and bring them to the sanctuary, where many are adopted by visitors. Cat Island was funded by several social institutions and organizations and is overseen by the Shanghai municipal government. Residents who want to adopt stray cats on the island have to learn each animal's unique history and guarantee a stable, long-term home for them. That's our show this week. Thank you for watching. I'm Jokia Rogers. Bye for now.